Paul?
Hi, David.
Hi, you can hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent. Hi, Carolyn. Hi, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Oh, they have a quorum. How far? Only 2 members.
What time?
Well, they're missing a member. So I guess they need one more for 3. Better go for him. There's Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Happy Monday.
What are they waiting for? Somebody.
For
Oh,
John. Yeah.
What's the latest? I can. Latest I can. Well, sometimes we get, we're done, we're starting half an hour earlier tonight, so. I hope John remembered it was starting at half an hour earlier tonight.
I can text him.
Chuck and I were just finishing up dinner. That's why I didn't want to just put my picture up. Paul, did you and Kelly get the thing I sent to you about the pets?
Yes, Carol. I think that's a good future monthly tip. I think this month we're going to try to focus on advertising chipper days, but I think that's a great topic. And in fact, that topic came up. We did a tabletop exercise with some of the El Paso Office of Emergency Management folks, and they brought up pet evacuation and pet planning. So yeah, I think it's a terrific.
I figured for a slow month or something, you could have it in your file, whatever.
No, it's perfect. It's just like planning for your vehicle and planning for your evacuation route. Have a plan for your pets. We don't have many large livestock in town, but I know like in Black Forest, that was a huge issue, horse evacuation.
Yeah, but if we get that horse rescue place here, that will be an issue.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure they'll be on top of it.
Okay, I have 4 minutes after 7. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got quorum. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Mountain Time. This is a meeting of the Green Mountain Falls Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee. We have Paul Yingling, Kelly Hunter, and David Douglas present. That is a quorum. Do we have any suggested changes for our agenda this evening? It is a long one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. None. Then do I have a motion to approve our agenda for this evening?
Motion to approve. Paul?
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Kelly's okay, so it's all approved. Now we're at persons present not on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker.
Did you get my note that I wanted to speak?
Yes.
Good. May I speak?
Yes.
Okay. I am just giving you a heads up, sort of. The Bronx Day Parade is taking place. The Bronx Day is July 29th. I attended a meeting, Zoom, online meeting of it last Friday. And well, there were a couple of things. David, I wrote to you about one of them, about this block captain idea that they came up with. I just wanted the committee to be aware that they're thinking along those same lines of, to get the word out about Bronx Day and recruiting volunteers. And so I didn't know if that would possibly overlap or what, but I just wanted y'all to know about that. The second thing is that one of the ideas that they came up with, as if you all didn't have enough to do, although I think it was my idea, was to ask the committees to, and y'all wouldn't have to do it, but have some representation in the parade itself. Starting, I guess they've already, I think the fire truck is already going to be there. But I'm just thinking in terms of, education and things like that. If anybody comes up with a great idea for entering the parade, y'all don't have to be there yourselves in it, but some kind of theme or something on what we're doing.
Okay.
So
I think David should dress up as Smokey the Bear.
Well, yeah. We'll take that under advisement. Well, those are good suggestions, Carolyn, and thank you for bringing that information forward. I do believe that anything that the community is doing in terms of block captains, it's certainly helpful if we could combine our efforts and maybe share the volunteers, who have signed up for one or the other and piggyback on each other's efforts. I think Paul was, in our last meeting, was going to write a job description for block captains for fire mitigation. I don't know if you've done that, Paul, but that was in our minutes of the last meeting. So that would be helpful to share, I think, once we have it.
Yes, David, I'm sorry. I have not yet gotten to that. So
Okay.
that is on the to-do list for sure.
Okay.
well, I guess I'm saying, should I let Lisa, I may have said something about that fire mitigation was also seriously considering block captains. I mean, should they start that cross-fertilization now or just wait until you have something more in place?
I think, if Lisa is heading that up, John is certainly well aware that we're trying to do block captains. It could be that he's already fertilized that idea with Lisa on the Bronx Day, but seems like they're, I don't think John has joined us yet, but yeah, it would seem that maybe he could have a chat with Lisa about that.
Okay.
Yeah, fine. And picking up the middle of the thread here. We're talking about building a database.
No,
Joint-
we were talking about Bronx Day block captains that was brought up in the Bronx Day committee meeting a few days ago, and Carolyn was bringing up that it would be should we be cooperating with each other in terms of the block captain issue, and is there an opportunity to benefit from what one or what fire mitigation or what Bronx Day committee is working on in terms of if we have Bronx Day volunteers as block captains, then maybe they'd be interested in being fire mitigation advisory committee block captains, or vice versa, or just a block captain in general.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah. So, just sharing information with one another. Okay. Our first item tonight is the strategic planning update, and Paul is leading that, and I am going to scroll. Am I sharing? Can y'all see the agenda? Okay, good. So here we go. We have our agenda for Paul. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, David. And could you enable screen sharing on my side, please?
Yes, I will do that. Okay, I've done it.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll begin with kind of the agenda that David was showing. Talk through the process briefly before we get underway, and that is we'll begin with just a discussion on successes and best practices. I think we've had a pretty good year, and talk about and capture some of those best practices. And then we'll go into the inputs for capital improvements for the town's strategic plan. And then based on that input, set some priorities about what we feel as a committee is most important. In terms of the process, then the way ahead, the Planning Commission and the Parks, Recreation and Trails Committee have also done this process. And so once all three committees are done, then we'll find a time for the committee chairs to meet, collate that input, and carry that forward to the Board of Trustees. So that's kind of the macro level process. So let's talk about the stuff that went really well, if that's okay. We had a lot of great successes this year. I'd like to begin with a nomination, and that's for Kelly's coordination with the Red Cross and the schools. I think that's a great initiative, reaching a really important audience. So I'm going to start us off there. All right, and we're just going to turn the spell check off in case I mangle some spelling here. Please forgive me. Other successes or more elaboration perhaps on that initiative with the Red Cross and schools, things that we feel have gone well this year.
In relation to that,
It could be about this issue or other things that have gone well, Kelly. Really, it's an open discussion.
I love that you guys went out. I think it was John and Carolyn went out to Tisreed to coordinate with Don Moore on what is it, NoFloco is doing. I just think that's fabulous what they're doing, and that because of your interest and participation, that we'll partner with them and learn from them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, they've got a mature program, a lot to learn there.
Well, I think one of the things that these 2 points um, emphasize for me is that the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee uh, is becoming engaged more than it's been engaged, in the broader community since I've been part of it. It's taken us a while to get to this point. We've all been on a learning curve, but we are engaging with the broader community like we never have before. But I mean, as an example, the first 2 things Kelly's coordination with Red Cross, coordination with No Flowco, the Teller County emergency management meeting that we attended back in March or April. All of those things to me are very healthy and are continuing, I think, to help us develop the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee and the programs that we want to sponsor.
Yeah, David, that's a great point. And I'm going to build on that. The Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management, another partner we've coordinated with, including this tabletop exercise this past week that John and I attended. So yeah, and Ann as well. I believe there was so lots of external partnerships being built.
I also think that we're building some trust between the committee and the town employees and staff. I think we're working together better now than we have in the past. There just seems to be a better trust factor.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree, David, and that just comes with time and effort. I think we've put a lot of energy into building those relationships. All right. Anything else?
Well, I think the ongoing mitigation, fuels mitigation, I mean, I don't see how we can leave that out because that's been really, I mean, whether it's Chipper Day or, CUSP or COSWAP and Mile High Youth Corps, and now the most recent grant that we have submitted and are waiting on approval. I think, we just can't not bring that up as a real win.
Well, and Paul's tips that are going out now.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll tell you, the little scare that we had earlier with that Rampart fire, I think will make people remember what it was like during Waldo and, maybe not be so complacent and be more interested in education at this point also. God bless our firefighters, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's true, Kelly. And we've had just heroic effort on our firefighters. Some fortunate snow and cold weather that tempered what could have been a really bad red flag condition. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, God's a good firefighter.
There he is, maybe the best of all time, right? Yeah. All right, and we can loop back to this if any others come to mind. But if we want to transition here, we can get into the other part of this, the inputs on areas where we want to focus and improve. And I will just confess my process and its limitations. I did get input. Oh, sorry, wrong document. I did get input from everybody, but Kelly, I'm going to apologize in advance. And I realize that I just sent this out to you this evening, but I did get your input, but it came in as not as blank, like the document didn't have stuff in it. So I'm not
Huh.
sure what to make of that. But I do want to capture that. And so just to clarify what I have so far, some color-coded input. This is the capital improvement plan you're seeing on your screen now. And there was an opportunity to provide rankings if you were so inclined. Then there was an opportunity to provide input by rank ordering what you consider to be most important. So David's input is in red, mine in blue, John's in this kind of rust color. And Kelly, again, I will apologize for that. It just, for whatever reason, it just came in as like nothing on there. So I'll
Huh.
ask.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't explain. I should have contacted you earlier, but why don't we, Kelly, since I kind of did you wrong here, would you mind if we started with you and you want to talk about the things that you consider to be most important in capital improvements?
Um,
Or we
One
could
of
look
the-
back to you.
one of the things that I thought would be important is widening the roads for being able to get in and out, because there are some roads up here that are really wonky trying to navigate. Another thing that we had talked about was, remember when Dan Batten was talking about, I think he called it safe spaces, or where the firefighters could gather, you know, if
Right.
for protection, but that other people in the community, if they had not already evacuated, a place where they could go also.
Okay, yeah, safe spaces for fire.
And that had something to do, I think, we were talking about those breakaway gates up by the water tower and down on Belvedere.
Right, right.
But if that were the case, and say the fire truck had to go that direction, is that bridge strong enough for that fire truck to get over?
Yeah, and Kelly, this has come up in other committees as well. And there really, I don't think, is a good technical evaluation of that bridge's capabilities. So it wouldn't be enough just to install the breakaway gates if that were feasible. It would be, is that a safe road, even for a private vehicle, let alone an emergency vehicle to go up? And so far as I can tell, we don't have recent accurate data on the load capacity of the bridge.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else I put down. I think I put 5 things, but I know those 3 were concerns.
Well, and again, feel free to jump back in as you're thinking about it. David, I did capture your inputs in red if you want to talk about yours, and then I'll go to John.
Well,
Or go ahead.
you know, I just think that our town, for all its quaintness, I do think there's some things that we could do to for aesthetic improvement, and that would be, you know, the sidewalks and you know, just clean up downtown. It just, in front of the Mucky Duck, you know, there's all those junky looking barbecue pits, and you know, it just doesn't look like a very it's a little too quaint looking. If you know what I mean.
Right, right.
And I think that when Mike and forget his wife's name, opened the Painted Bear, they actually had made a proposal to the Board of Trustees that they were willing to pay to build sidewalk to connect to that sidewalk that runs in front of Mucky Duck and the Blue Moose. And it was rejected. I don't understand why, but I think this is one of the things that's actually in our comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, facelift, anything that would just improve the look of the town would be a good thing to do. We've talked about any number of initiatives that could be done in terms of communications. And I've heard all kinds of things thrown out about cell service improvement, but there's a lot of beneficial things that could come from improving our cell service, emergency communications. I understand there was somebody that got injured on one of the trails and they had to come all the way down. They had to leave the person up there, come all the way down to find somebody to help and then go back up. I mean, and it was because they couldn't get any cell service coverage. So, those to me are things that we need to do for the greater, for the benefit of everyone, all stakeholders, not just residents, but visitors as well. And I don't know what the current situation is with our septic system downtown, but a sewer treatment system for the downtown businesses seems like a good idea to me. And then a designated spillover parking area would seem like a good idea.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have one other thing that I've been thinking about, and I'm one of those people that I have a hard time getting out of the box. When you say, we're supposed to do this in the context of the comprehensive plan, that becomes my frame of reference. But one of the things that I really think we need to focus on, and I would really put this as number one, would just be enforcement of our town code. I mean, why have laws if you're not going to enforce them? Why have town code, for example, nuisance trees, if you're not going to enforce it? Why have a town marshal if you're not going to enforce your laws? So to me, enforcing our laws should be number one on the list. So.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of mine are very similar, David. Before I go on though, I'm gonna ask John if you'd like to jump in here. We have your inputs in kind of this rust color.
Hey,
Yes.
Paul, before we move on to John, I'm looking at my list and I thought I sent you a revision a few days ago that was different than what this list is.
I can check, but I thought this was the most recent email you sent.
Okay, well,
But we can certainly change this. I don't want to capture anything that's not accurate. So if there are things you want to change,
I can't. I'll have to look at my document that I sent you, and I will need to exit my screen here to do that. But go on to John.
okay, we'll do. All right, John. Your inputs are in the rust color.
Well, I can tell that my understanding of the instructions were very different than you and David. So I thought we were supposed to do a committee-centric assessment. And so when I was looking through those priorities, I didn't see things that, directly tied to fire mitigation. So I created things that would be connected to fire mitigation with respect to town dollars. I thought that's, again, I'm sorry I misunderstood the.
No, John, and believe me that there's when we kind of capture all this and roll it up, there will be an opportunity, whether it's a strategic planning issue, capital improvement, or anything else, where we'll be able to, as a committee, identify the highest priorities for us as a committee. So this input is great, and we'll build on it in the subsequent step.
Because I do agree with, the spirit of what's, the lines above me in terms of, yeah, it would be, we don't have a tidy town, and the gazebo is a central brand, and, there are things that need to be maintained and beautified. Look at, where would I like the city to spend dollars, relative to their values? That is, if they say they value fire mitigation, then let's put dollars towards mitigation. Here are the kinds of things that I would want them to put dollars to. And we know all about the grant that just got submitted on the 4th. And if we get it, wonderful. And if we don't, I still think those are dollars which get a lot of bang for the buck for the town if they would, invest. So we're not asking for that much money in this grant, $16,000. It's scalable. So if we even got $10,000, a lot could be done. So that's my number one priority in terms of where should the town put money. The second is at the bottom. It's a hire an intern dedicated to fire mitigation volunteer coordination. So in the event we do get awarded this forestry grant, I keep thinking next steps, and I'm quite overwhelmed with considering how we'll be able to coordinate the same way that Don and his wife Tony do. They're workaholics, and when Laura Thomas was here Tuesday, she validated that with me. She says, I love the program. They're great people. But it's hard for other communities to reproduce because leading the charge are two workaholics that are putting an awful lot into it. And it's obvious that it was nice for her to validate that, but it's clear that's how it's getting done. So that's my number two. Then evaluating road widths. I think we need to be considering egress for our, to save lives for our residents and get our emergency vehicles up the mountain, and then enforcing the nuisance tree ordinance. Anyway, I think those things are, so that's my list.
Paul, I found my revised document that I sent to you.
Okay, David. And again, I apologize for that oversight if I missed it.
That's okay. I mean, you've had a lot going on. So as my number one, and I'll now call it my number two, since I added a new one, but it's survey the town rights of way.
So instead of sidewalk improvement, survey town rights of way?
No.
Or
So let me just go. My revised list that I sent you was survey the town rights of way, sidewalk improvement, cell service improvement, anticipatory budgeting for maintenance and fire mitigation is number next, and public restrooms. So those were the ones that I sent you. And in addition to that, of course, was enforcement of our code.
Okay.
I mean, to me, surveying the town rights of way goes with the issue of roadway widening or roadway improvement for access and egress, for evacuation and getting equipment in. Because every time we bring up this subject, the pushback from town management is, well, we don't know where the boundaries are. It's we don't know, some properties are in the middle of the road, and there's all these, just like we're trying to do the right-of-way mitigation right now, and we're having to get these release forms. If we knew where our surveyed boundaries are, we wouldn't have to go through this. And I think it would be money well spent and would satisfy some of the objections to why we can't do certain things that we're saying are important, like widening the roads and doing mitigation work. So anyway.
Okay, yes, got it, David. I added those in. And I'll just add, and we were, you know, in the next step, we'll talk about some of these larger issues beyond the capital improvements. But when I just looked at capital improvements, to me, the hazard assessments and you know, the all the issues that everyone else has raised about code enforcement, hazards, having a staffer, a paid staffer with fire mitigation. To me, that's the number one issue. And in fact, when we get to the strategic plan, I have kind of 5 sub steps. To me, if we could only do one thing, it would be that, starting from public education through code enforcement with, you know, fines and teeth attached to it. And then my other 2 capital improvement focuses were around the gazebo park. Again, that is the town's brand. That's the visual. That's what's on our letterhead. That's what's on the town symbol. And so I think that making sure that gazebo and bridge are stable, I think, is really critical. But I do take everyone else's points that, you know, we have a lot of important issues to deal with.
Well, if I may, I want to explain the anticipatory budgeting. Every year that I've presented our budget, the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee budget, every year I've asked for more money for anticipating grants that might be available during the year that we don't know about in that moment. In other words, put money in the budget for things that you can't say are actual, you know, so you're anticipating the opportunity to get a grant, but you need to have the money budgeted to do the matching. And our BOT and town management so far have been very reluctant to budget anything other than what they can see on the horizon.
So this would be a set aside fund for matching grants that have yet to appear, but almost certainly will. We don't know which ones, but there will be some, and they'll have some matching requirements. So,
well, this most recent grant that popped up that John worked so hard on, there was a matching element to that grant, and everybody was wringing their hands over how are we going to do that, because we didn't have the money.
right.
I mean, it got resolved, but the fact
Right.
is that is a recurring theme all the time.
Okay. All right, so keeping those issues in mind, I do want to turn a bit of attention to the town strategy assessment, and same process. I captured, and not everybody put input into every one of these things, but again, I have David's input in red, mine in blue, and then we'll add, you know, make sure we capture all others as well. So same, David, if you would mind, since we've got your input on the screen, and again,
Okay.
if there are other things that I missed, I do apologize, but if you want to talk through your inputs.
Yeah, sure. And I only, you know, I just made commentary on the ones that you know, I had some passion about, I guess. You know, I have heard that the town businesses are opposed to a downtown revitalization program. That's kind of a third hand that I've heard that. So I don't know if it's true or not, but I do, as I said earlier, I think that it would enhance our town a bit if we kind of gussied it up. And then on creating and maintaining a list of funding sources and grant applications. I mean, this is coming right out of the comprehensive plan. And to my knowledge, we really don't have an organized effort around grants of any kind. So I believe that we certainly need to be doing that for always exploring grants, and I would include wildfire related grants in the list of funding sources.
Mhm.
You know, connecting the trails, I think, is important. Distributing tourism information and event posters anywhere, I think is also helpful. It's helpful to the businesses. It says we're friendly. We are a visitor friendly town. We welcome people and we want them to enjoy our town. And so we're providing as much information as possible. Oh, you know, this water storage issue has come up many times in fire mitigation discussions, and in previous meetings. I think probably before any of our when we had Dan and gosh, Rich were on the committee, they both said that is so impractical to try and have a, you know, to take on a project by the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee to identify where you're going to place, you know, how would you go about deciding on the side of the mountain where you're going to put a water storage that would be in the right place at the right time to provide water to fight a forest fire? I mean, that's just one of those things that I think is either you got to have a long-term horizon on how you're going to fund something like that, or you might as well get rid of it. I think we have accomplished the wildfire public education, you know, or we're in the midst of it. So, you know, I think that is something that's being done. Maintenance of a green waste disposal site within reasonable proximity. Again, you know, we've got any number of places you can take your stuff to get it disposed of. The question is, does everybody have a trailer or a truck that they can load stuff in and haul it somewhere? I think if you're gonna, you know, I think it would be better just to use a chipper program or have a place in town people could drop stuff off where it could be chipped in town, rather than trying. I mean, I don't see any reason to set up something new. It could be done in conjunction with the Historic Green Mountain Falls Foundation to provide a source of chipped green waste for their horse rescue facility. So if you really wanted to try and do something, I would try to do it in conjunction with HGMFF. Same on the creating fire and safety and fire awareness posters. I mean, we've done those things, and are continuing to do that. Hazard assessments for homeowners are currently available. We just need to probably have more trained volunteers. I'm looking at 2.4.
Okay. Yep.
And 2.6, our evacuation plan is complete. And of course, we just had the tabletop exercise. So I believe that's an ongoing process. The breakaway gates, all the professionals that I have talked to have said it makes no sense to drive to encourage people to go up Hondo in order to try to escape, because you're driving people into the farthest reach of the canyon. And if the fire is sweeping uphill, you're going to trap people by telling them, oh, take that route as an escape route. It is a dangerous path of escape where you're going to wind up, I think, getting people killed. So I think that breakaway gates at the end of Hondo and Belvedere are a bad idea. And on 2.9, I think we have provided escape routes for, for people to, for short-term rental units to put in their books. I don't know that we have the ability to force people to do that, but if we want it done, the BOT is going to have to require that, I think, of the short-term rental people to include that information. Hadn't somebody bought the old fire station and already turned it into an apartment, a venue for
Yeah,
events?
exactly. Yeah, like a party venue. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think this one is going to come out in the
Yeah.
next edition.
And I thought the wayfinding signs had already been done.
Yes,
some-
posted by the PRT. Yes.
Yeah. Is that it for me?
Paul, do you mind going back up
Oh,
to 2.11 and expanding the box so that we can see what's below it? So now you need to go down because
okay.
it's 2.11. I said
2.11. Okay.
2.11. So yeah, expand hey, aha. Now we can read it.
Okay. And David, yeah, there were a couple other comments.
Okay.
Yeah, land code, I think. Yeah.
The use of conservation easements on key undeveloped properties surrounding the town. I mean, isn't that what HGMF has done essentially by buying the town facing side of Dewey and Red Butte and what's the other? I mean, I don't know what this is really referring to as far as conservation easements, because the town doesn't really own any significant property now. Does it? That could be turned into a conservation easement?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And I thought land use code had already been done by the planning commission.
Yes, I think that is another issue that now might be revised and maintained, but yeah, the big work on that has been done.
Yeah.
So I'll just touch on a couple things that I came up with. One, 2.1, obviously we're doing the monthly tips. I really want to just emphasize my focus on 2.3 because I don't think it's enough to say that we're educating the public, providing documents, providing tips, all very good. But if so, I'll harken back to John's comments. It's if it's important, then it ought to be funded. And to me, the greatest risk to my property, I'm at the far southwestern end of the town, and fire is the greatest risk I have, like most of us. So I believe we should start with a multi-tiered approach, starting with the stuff we're already doing, public education, of course, but to build on the no flow code concept, courtesy assessments and community assistance for people who would like to mitigate their property but can't because of physical limitations, financial limitations, whatever it might be. And then to build on David's earlier comments, we have a fire code, including a nuisance tree code, that we should be enforcing. First by warnings, again, as another form of public education, but then ultimately through enforcement, and to include a fine if the person, including me, just doesn't comply voluntarily. And here I think I like John's idea of an intern, but I would argue that if fire mitigation is our town's #1 priority, and that's an open debate, we should have money behind it. We should be paying, hiring and paying staff to do all of the things associated with fire mitigation, from public education through code enforcement. And yes, that will cost money, but if that's a priority, then that's where our resources should be. And if there's a mismatch between our priorities and our resources, that's something our Board of Trustees should address. So that's my pitch for a more comprehensive, voluntary to mandatory fire mitigation program. I wanted to in a moment, we're going to talk about capturing inputs from prioritizing all these inputs and deciding what's most important to us as a committee, but I want to make sure we capture Kelly and John's input as well. Kelly, do you want to, is there things you'd like to add on to this? John?
I did go through these lists. We're focusing on the section 2, which is where fire mitigation activity was centered. I had, some minor, comments about maybe the wording of how, how it was documented, the exact strategy, the way that it was worded. But I think you and David have done a good job in responding.
Okay, well then let's go and talk about prioritization, because obviously there's a lot of great things that we could do, but we can't do them all. And so what will we do? And so I'm going to turn our attention to this task of setting priorities. And it's in the Word document if you're kind of following along in your hymnal. I'll expand this a bit so it's a bit more visible.
I have a question
Yes,
on the last thing we did. It was in relation to not having a water source in case of a wildfire. Are they not able to? Catamount Reservoir sits right above us. Are they not able to access the water from that if there was a fire on this side? You know how they have those, I guess they're helicopters with these buckets on them that they dump on the fire. I mean, that may sound like a totally dumb question. I just don't know.
yeah, I know in previous fires, I know for certain Rampart Reservoir was used to fight the Black Forest fire. So I'm guessing that yes, those reservoirs would be available. I mean, in terms of like using the helicopter bucket dump technique. I don't know that there's a way to create a steady hydrant-like supply from Catamount Reservoir just because of the distances
Right.
and the geography involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Here's a little side note relative to the Rampart fire that we just had. I learned that in order for them to do air transport of water, the road below needs to be closed for safety. And so in both cases, when it was on the other side of 24, they only had to close Rampart, minimum road closure. If something did occur, on our side of the mountain, again, minimum road closure, because there's not a whole lot of pedestrian or traffic. So that those things are in our favor.
Yeah. So this next, which is really the last big piece of this process, is about priority setting. And this is a holistic look, whether it's capital improvements, whether it's town strategic plan, other things. It could be, personnel, budgeting, administration. This is our chance to provide input about what we consider to be most important. If you've ever read Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, this chart will probably look very familiar. The urgent and important chart Urgent refers to time sensitivity. It's got to happen right now. And importance refers to its impact or consequence. If it doesn't happen, there's going to be catastrophic effects. Every organization's got their version of this. If you're in a flying organization like an aircraft, an airline, then safety of flight is obviously the urgent and important task. If you don't have that, you shut everything else down until you get it. For our purposes, I would encourage that we try to limit the urgent and important to just 2 or 3 inputs, which is hard, I know, because those are things that not only have to happen, they really should happen in the next year, because this input will be going into the calendar year 24 budget. And so what we're saying when we say something is urgent and important, we're saying it really matters to the town, it's important, and it's got to happen in the next budget cycle. It's urgent. It can't be deferred. Then there are other issues, and I captured a couple that several folks sent in that might not be urgent. It doesn't have to happen right now, but it's important. It's consequential, and if you don't do it, if you ignore problems in this quadrant long enough, they become urgent, like road widening, enforcing tree ordinances, etc.
I think those two are urgent and important.
So let's just move those over here, and we'll just see if there are other nominations. So if we put these here, we're saying not only does this have to happen, but it has to happen in calendar year 24.
And there's consequences if it doesn't.
Yes, that if you,
That's the important component.
right, if you don't widen the roads in calendar year 24, a very negative consequence is possible or even likely. Or if you don't enforce the nuisance tree ordinance, then I'll just agree with David on the nuisance tree ordinance. I could be persuaded in either direction on the roads, but I feel like if I were endangering my neighbors by driving 60 miles an hour down Belvedere, I would get a ticket because I'm acting recklessly in a way that puts other people in danger. I would argue if I have nuisance trees on my property that threaten not just my home, but other people's homes, it's the equivalent behavior. I am negligently doing something that could hurt somebody else.
One thing and I know this is sort of nuanced, but we cannot widen roads in 2024 because we have the impediment of poor surveys. So I would argue that the more important of the two is let's get the town surveyed so we know where the property boundaries are.
Yes, that's a good point, David. So one of the things, if you put it in this important category, yes, it's got to happen, but there's a precursor or a prerequisite, which is the survey. Before you can widen the roads, you've got to know where the town rights of way begin and end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John or Kelly, I mean, what the things you've heard discussed, added, where would you put some of the things we've discussed in which box?
I would say exactly where we've got them.
Okay.
So Paul, this is also sort of predicated on us having alignment with those other things, the other boxes that we've reviewed. It'd be helpful to review that to see where we've had alignment on other items that we should transfer over here.
Yeah, so let me go back to our previous document.
Because I like your idea, I put it as an intern, but I like what you're saying. A seasoned professional, if we want to build a commitment towards fire mitigation, that's probably pretty essential.
Right, and I know, yes, that there was a discussion on, yeah, should it be, an intern, part-timer, full-timer? But yeah, that was an area where there was pretty strong agreement. Enforcement was a recurring theme. We did, several folks brought up enforcement as a priority. Budgeting was something we haven't yet discussed in terms of where that should go, but there have been several issues related to budgeting, whether it's anticipatory budgeting around having funds available for grant matching, or just visibility at a more granular level on where our town spends its money. I think we have some pretty broad categories in the town budget, so it's not always obvious. Public works is a line in the town budget, but at a more granular level, what does that mean? What are we getting for those various public works dollars?
Would it be possible to have some of the, maybe hire an extra public works guy that, or two, that could be trained in tree service? For, for people that, I mean, areas where, I mean, like with me, I know that I live on Social Security. I don't have the money to take down big trees. I don't
Right.
have it.
The answer to your question, Kelly, is yes, it is possible. It's a matter of whether, as a community, we want to commit those monies to staff, but absolutely it's possible. I think we all believe that.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I'll just add into this, the idea of paid staff around fire mitigation, whether it's Kelly's point about people who are trained to take down nuisance trees, enforce the code. I mean, you can imagine a number of functions that someone whose job it was to protect us from the risks of wildfire, a lot of things that could go into that, from education to actual, taking down hazardous trees.
I mean, I don't know legally if they'd be allowed to do that on private property. I'm not sure how that would work. But
yeah, and Kelly, I think you raised a great point that if we could establish a goal, for example, of removing nuisance trees, and then we can work with the other committees and the town board to say, well, how is it best to do that? Is it best to contract that out, have a paid town staffer, have a brigade of volunteers who operate at their own risk on a voluntary basis? So I think, once we say this is an important goal, then, down the road, we can brainstorm, well, how best to get there.
yeah, and maybe it's just setting dollars aside to go with somebody like Evergreen Tree Service in Woodland Park, who's a professional arborist. So I don't know, but if we're saying that's important, then maybe it's worth throwing money at.
Right.
And I'd like to introduce a subtlety, because the more, people I have been talking to in that regard, what No Flow Co is doing and what Laura Thomas recommended is, you can't have volunteers doing these technical trees. You're not going to get volunteers climbing trees, them down when it's a tech, when it needs to be felled technically. And there's plenty of trees in town that need that. When we talk about so there'll have to be at least two tiers. Volunteers can do simple tree removal when things are non-technical. There's aren't properties at risk, power lines at risk. But these tall trees that are between two cabins and next to a power line, that's a professional task.
And maybe if it's next to a power line, we're looking at utility company taking it down.
And and just FYI, Becky has asked me to, as I walk around town with the doggies, to start photographing those trees that are directly under power lines, but the utilities would take charge of removing. But
Cool.
trees I'm talking about, there's a great one, Kelly, as you head up Foster, before you get to Colorado, there's two trees. They're so tall, they're between cabins, but there's also power lines, not within 20 feet, but within the height of the tree, you know, like it has to be brought down in stages. There's no way to you know, fell it in a like you would in an open forest.
Yeah.
Any other categories for either part of the important box, whether urgent and important or important but not yet urgent? Anything on budgeting, administration?
Isn't it isn't the bridge that goes across to the gazebo an urgent matter?
Not speaking as an engineer and expert, but yeah, I would vote for that, David. That there's some structural concerns with the bridge, from what I've heard, sitting in with the PRT, that requires some pretty urgent attention, and that might be one of those maintenance tasks that's not safely deferred too much longer.
What's wrong with it?
That both the gazebo and the bridge are deteriorating in terms of structural integrity. Not a safety issue right now, but
Yeah, but you don't want to wait until it becomes a safety.
right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Okay.
Little preventive, proactive repair would be both cheaper and safer than waiting for a bad thing to happen. What about this? I want to go to that lower right quadrant. This neither important nor urgent is a category that's sometimes useful for talking about what you're not going to do. Like, for example, if we say, well, we're going to add paid staff, or are we going to stop doing something else? If we're talking about we're going to focus more on fire mitigation, are we going to do less of something else? Because adding more tasks to the to-do list, and I think we've all experienced this in just our volunteer work, it gets tough. You do have a finite amount of time, energy, other resources. So are there things that we're currently doing that qualify as neither important nor urgent, and therefore we as a town should stop doing?
Nothing I can think of. I think they usually consider how best to use the resources they have, especially with Becky in place. I mean, she's very knowledgeable.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is tough because obviously we're already in a very resource constrained environment. So there's not a lot of slack in the system for things that we might stop doing.
Well, I might be alone in my view here, but I have not heard of anyone getting a speeding ticket. I've not heard of any sort of tickets being issued to anyone. Our current marshal and his assistant don't work on the weekends, and that's when we have the most people in town. I have to question the value of having a full-time paid marshal and an assistant who do nothing. And I mean, if you want to free up dollars to accomplish other more important things, I would contract with, you know, El Paso Sheriff's Department and have them. I mean, I just don't know what kind of police emergencies we really have in Green Mountain Falls that can't be covered by some other agency.
Right.
Well, my experience is that the marshal does a lot more than we're aware of. He rides around town and he knows people where the sheriff's department does not. I've been robbed 3 times since I lived here.
Oh, my.
I did. Oh, Kelly, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, sorry.
I
Is that
like
a-
the idea of
is
having,
that- is that an indictment of our policing?
no, it's not.
Oh, okay. So
It's not. I like the idea of having a marshal who knows who lives here, who knows the people in town better than the sheriff's department does, who looks around and makes it a point to ride around town and just be aware of who is where and doing what and when. I love it.
And you can imagine there being 2 questions. One is, you know, are we over-resourcing law enforcement? One question. A second question might be, if the level of resources is right, are we using them in the right way? Do we have police on the weekends? Do we have police, you know, at night? Are police available, for example, to help enforce our fire codes, like our nuisance tree codes? So you could imagine tackling this issue in a couple different ways. One might be the absolute level of resources, 1.5 full-time equivalent positions, you know, a full-time marshal and part-time deputy. But the other way to address that would be, let's say we keep that 1.5 FTE. Where do we spend it? You know, where and when are they doing their work, and what is the scope of that work? Does it include, you know, for example, fire code enforcement?
One of the good things that came out of that tabletop session were all the informal conversations. And I was able to have an informal conversation with Officer Goings, and he said that they are getting ready for code enforcement, that they're going through training right now. So you're raising a good point, Paul. You know, it's the give and take of within the resource of and how the things get allocated in terms of time priorities. You know, sort of like that forestry grant, getting back to the match. You know, the match is basically going to be 64 hours of public works time per year, labor. So it's about, you know, we've sort of talked about this in other ways, is getting a stronger allocation for labor towards fire mitigation efforts.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point, John, that this idea of how much of our town labor that we're already paying for is dedicated to fire mitigation. You know, we're already paying 1.5, you know, law enforcement positions. How much of their time is dedicated to fire mitigation? We're already paying for a public works department. How much of their time, and so on. So yeah, I think it's not just adding more resources, it might be reallocating priorities. And for me, at least, yeah, the roads are important. Absolutely, maintaining roads, there are lifelines. But that if our town experiences catastrophe, it will be from a wildfire.
And I've seen the public works guys, you know, trimming trees and stuff down there at the post office. So they already know how to do some of that.
Just going to capture that. Okay. All right, so this is close to the end of our discussion. I will, you know, kind of close with one offer on future discussions, but keep in mind that all the other work we did looking at the strategic plan, the capital improvement program kind of feeds into this document, and this or something like this is what David will carry forward as our inputs to the other committee members and ultimately to the board on what we feel is important for the town. All right, one final offer. Oh, sorry, was there something? I don't want to rush off if there's another input. Okay, so the last part of our discussion, and this is kind of optional, but these are some of the things, I kind of do this as a day job in terms of facilitating strategic planning for public sector organizations. These are some of the topics when I'm asked to come into an organization and kind of figure out where and how they need help, so the kinds of issues that come up. If you're a fan of business literature, you'll recognize that 8-step leading change model from John Cotter's work on the right. Design thinking is kind of a ubiquitous customer experience concept, designing everything from healthcare to IT and everything in between. And then the strategic planning process on the left there is it's kind of a linear process that comes out of a work by John Bryson called Strategic Planning for Public and Not-for-Profit Organizations. So I don't want to consume too much of our time. I realize we have a massive agenda. These are also things that we could discuss at some point in the future. So
We
before
could make this a full-time job, Paul.
that would give me at least 2, maybe more. But, yeah. All right, David, I know I've taken up a big chunk of our time tonight, so I'm going to hand off back to you. I will be emailing you both these documents, the Word document and the Excel document, for your notes to carry forward with your fellow committee chairs.
All right. Well, thank you for leading this, Paul. It would not have gotten done otherwise.
Yes,
Yeah, good work.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Let's see here. I have to find my agenda. Y'all bear with me here just a second.
This is Ann. I want to tell you something nice that happened, if I could. We have cabins that are 100 years old, and I came to look at one of them the other day, and some kind soul cut down it was a bush that had grown into multi-trees right behind one of them. It was on top of the old outhouse. A lot of fertilizer down there for 100 years. And they cut it completely down and hauled away all the stuff. And I don't know who did it, but I'm glad they did it. That was very nice of them, whoever it might have been. So.
That's great, Ann. Yes, we have nice people in our town who kind of look out for one another.
Well, they are, especially, I'm old. I can't do that kind of stuff. And it was just whoever did it some people might say, well, oh, those are my trees. I don't want you to do that, but boy, I don't care.
And that's your cabin on Colorado?
Yes. Did you do
There
it?
was, I did not, but there was mitigation work going on at the Brown House downhill from you. So
Okay.
they were doing a serious amount of mitigation at that house.
Oh, I know them, of course. Yes. So
Yeah,
they,
the Hansons, yeah.
Debbie and I can't think of his name, but yeah, I know who they are. Well, I'll be sure to thank them then. Thank you, John.
Yes.
I'm having trouble finding my, getting back to my agenda. Let's see. There we go. Have we got it? Can y'all see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry for the delay on that. Okay. So we are still in number 5, old business. Item B, CUSP grant right-of-way remediation project. Let's see here. Let's skip down to number 2. Updates on the release agreement returns and issues. I did get an email from Bo Ayad this afternoon with a list of new releases he received since, John, you did the last survey. Yeah, I think you got that too, John.
Yes, he sent it to me. Yes.
Yeah. So how many have we got returned at this point out of, what were there, 200 people on the list? Is that right?
I believe it was 192 total entries with
Yeah.
some people having multiple properties. So one
Okay.
owner might have several lots, but that was the total number of lots, 192.
Okay, so the total number of lots is 192. How many have we gotten returned so far out of 192 lots, John?
Yeah, I didn't, I don't have that calculated, David. But we're somewhere around 25%-ish at best.
Yeah.
It's still low.
Still low and still a lot of work to do. We're at mid-April, and this project we wanted to kick off in mid-May. So we need to, I think now we need to start hitting I won't say the panic button, but the urgency button. How's that? Do we need to prioritize, start picking a given right of way and say we're going to prioritize our efforts on that particular right of way on either side, because that's where we have the most release agreements returned, and it's going to take a little effort to get maybe the other few people that are bordering that right of way to sign their release. And so we can at least, so I guess what I'm saying is, can we start clearing maybe one right of way at a time to tell Adrian, okay, you could start here. Just trying to come up with a plan for, it's either that or do a door-to-door campaign just on a, broad basis, or, do we need to do more social media? Do we, I guess I'm grasping for ideas here of how we increase our participation rate on the release agreements.
Let me throw this out, and I value the approach that you're offering. I'm going to suggest that we let Adrian be the driver in terms of, where he's seeing priority and where he's seeing where he can get the crews in. And then via social media and other approaches, we continue to let people know we're looking for their release forms to be returned. But as I understand that release form, the way it's written is we're making what a lawyer would say is reasonable efforts to communicate, giving time for responses. But it's not necessary, right? The release is not essential to be received back. We're doing our due diligence and our best to alert the public, give them a chance to respond. But if they choose not to, even with those best efforts, we can still proceed. So I know that's a bit aggressive, but anyway, that's one approach.
I wish you were our town attorney, John. That is not the position the town is taking. I asked the question of Becky in one of our meetings, what percentage will be enough? And her answer was 100%.
Well, then we won't get anything done. That sounds overly.
Well, that was my exact response, was I felt we would be doing good to get a 20 to 25, 30% response rate. But if we were expected to get 100%, this project would never happen.
And it shifts power away from the town being able to mitigate its own land.
Yep. But that's what the attorney for the town has basically said is you have to get these releases signed so that the town doesn't have any liability.
Didn't we send them out regular mail?
We did.
Can we send them out, what is it, return receipt requested or something like that, so we at least know that people received them?
You could. I'm not sure that you can make the case that just because you have proof that they received it, that they have they're giving agreement.
I'm not going to say this is everyone's excuse, but when Nick and I were at the post office on Tuesday, we got one person's question regarding the release form because it didn't have an expiration date. And my explanation to say, well, the grant expires at the end of the year, therefore, that's our perception of the expiry of when strangers can enter your backyard. Wasn't really a great answer for them. They sort of understood it. They did sign the release form and give me one, but that was what was holding them back from having completed it earlier.
Yeah. I've made every argument I can that if the utility company decides they're going to work on a high line or that power line that's bordering your property, they don't come ask you to sign a release before they do the work. It's the same thing. We're doing work on our property that borders someone else's property. We have the right to work on our property. All this is doing is saying, well, just in case, there's a dispute over the property line, we want you to agree that, you're not going to sue us if we, because of the poor quality of surveys that we have in this town that are over 100 years old. If a tree gets cut by mistake on your property, you won't hold us liable. I mean, that's the whole deal.
All right. Well, David, we have a big agenda. I'd be happy to work with Carolyn to try to get something out for, token people to say, hey, we need your release forms. Carolyn can work on Facebook. I'll use, and Carolyn, I'm actually leaning on you mostly. If you can get something, that politely pokes people, then I'll use the same thing for Church in the Wildwood, and we'll figure out if there's other venues for getting out the word and poking people.
Yes, John, let's talk after or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
John, I think your idea of getting with Adrian and finding out, if he has identified any areas that are priorities for him, is a great idea. It would help focus our attention on those areas which are his priorities. And I will be happy to reach out to him and see if I can get that answer. I had done that about a month ago, and he wasn't enough along that he could give me those priorities at that point. So I'll reach out to him again and see what we can do in terms of prioritizing certain rights of way. The other thing, we can take a look at the releases that we have returned so far and see if there's any particular right of way that we're close to 100% on.
And David, I do have those 192 lots broken down by geographic clusters.
Yeah.
So either you or John could send me the just the raw data, who's complied or who's signed the waiver. I can enter them into the spreadsheet and see if there's a cluster where we're mostly done.
Okay. John, do you want me to fill in the spreadsheet of the most recent returns and send that to Paul?
That sounds good.
Okay, because you sent me the most up-to-date version.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll take that and plug in the ones that Bo sent me this afternoon and send that to Paul.
Sounds good.
When I was the director down at the Historical Society Museum in Manitou, we obtained a collection of Sawyer and Garston. Is it Sawyer and Garston? They mapped out this whole area, and they still have those maps down there. I can check and see if they have them for Green Mountain Falls for rights of way, because they would have mapped out. They were the primary, the name just went out of my head. The primary people who mapped out the area 100 and some years ago. I don't know if those maps would be helpful to someone who was surveying, but I can't imagine that they wouldn't.
Well, the fact is we can't afford to hire a surveyor to go and survey all the rights of way. I mean, first of all, there's about a 6 or 8 month time lag to engage a surveyor and crew to do it. The cost is not in the budget. And if you wait 6 to 8 months to get the surveyor crew started, you're at the end of the year and the budget money runs out.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is those maps are already there.
I'm happy for you to get the maps and deliver them to Becky and ask.
Oh, no. They would not leave the museum, but someone who knew what they were looking at would probably be able to have access to them. I just don't know if Green Mountain Falls was included in that, but I will call tomorrow and find out.
Okay. All right. Well, I will contact Adrian and Paul, I'll send you the update of what we have got so far. And then I guess we're going to have some sidebar conversations about how we're going to go after getting some more of these releases returned. Because I don't think we're going to solve it tonight.
I am available this weekend if we wanted to do plan the beginnings of a door-to-door campaign. But I do think that, as you commented earlier, starting with Adrian's priorities and working back from there would probably be the most efficient way, even if we do decide to go door to door.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. All right, so Carolyn, have you done any social media on this topic at all? Since I'm not a Facebook person, I wouldn't know.
You know, I haven't, because it just, I'm so down on Facebook as far as its effectiveness. You know, once you post something, it just disappears in a slew of lost dog postings and things like that. Oh, there goes one right now. And so I haven't, but I'm going to talk to John about this offline and see. And I see a story here. Okay. But I need to, I really can't. I see a story here. That's all I really want to say.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, no, I haven't done any social media. I want to. I want to. Yeah. The other. I want to. I'm thinking of calling a friend. I'm trying to get a hold of a friend of mine who has been very successful with other forms of social media, not necessarily for this, but I think I think it's due to a lot of people's inaction. Just, you know, they see the letter and they just put it aside. And I mean, I was going to ask you, why do you think that, does anybody else on the committee have any opinions as to why people aren't responding? No. Okay.
Well, Carol, I'll tell you, and I shared this with David. I'm on a right of way. I signed the release because I thought that's just trying to set a good example. But there is really no upside for a property owner because I'm waiving my a small amount of my liability protection. You know, someone damages one of my trees by mistake. But there's no upside for me. I don't get compensated for granting that release. I guess I get my, an area near my property mitigated for fire purposes. But there's not a strong upside from a very sort of economically rational resident to participate. It seems like I'm giving up something potentially valuable, a liability claim, and not getting a lot back. Now, I think we have a lot of good neighbors in the town who want to do what's right for the town and their neighbors. So we have had a number of people do it, but just from a purely rational perspective, I can see why they wouldn't.
Thank you.
Okay. Education program update and recommendations. Recent developments, I guess, John, you and Nick stood at the post office. How did that go?
Amazingly well. I wish Nick was here to reiterate. People were highly receptive. You know, it was obvious that people wanted to talk about fire mitigation, and I got to meet a lot of people. That was fabulous. We sort of didn't anticipate having as much interest. So, one of the problems was, people wanted to stand around and talk, and it was keeping other people that looked like they might have been interested to stop and talk from, hanging around longer, and they would, then move on. So it does need to happen again. And Nick and I are talking about, finding another date to do it. It was scheduled for Tuesday. So Tuesday morning from 10 to noon, we did it. Then at 2, Laura Thomas from Cusk came and met with lawyer Nick, myself, and we, looked at trees and we talked, and we were on our way to town hall when the plume arrived. And Nick, Laura, and the mayor all said that they would hang out at the post office at 3, but of course priorities shifted with that plume. So we canceled the 3 to 6 session. I did not. It didn't feel right to be distracting people when, there were more pressing matters.
Right.
So it does need to reoccur. There was a positive response. An interesting number of people use our post office that don't live in Green Mountain Falls. So met people from Chipeta Park, met people from Woodland Park.
Wow.
So that was something that surprised me. In the case of Woodland Park people, it's people that used to live here but no longer do, and for whatever reason, they like coming to Green Mountain Falls on a daily basis. So it does need to be repeated. So more to come on that.
Okay. You said you got one person? to
I
sign
got
the-
one.
Yeah.
I printed off a whole pile of releases, and the people that stopped by were not on rights of way. I had 2 lists. I had the people on the rights of way list, and then I had the list of all residents, and no one fit me. Everyone that said they weren't on a right of way was not on a right of way, except the one that had been previously reluctant to complete it because of the lack of expiration date. So yeah, I ended up with 1 form out of that whole 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, if it takes 2 hours of our time to get, that's not a very good return on time, is it?
Well, no, and it was a great return in terms of promoting the word, hearing the interest. Lots of people are concerned. Met a number of residents that said, we're honest, I'm too old to mitigate my property, but if someone wanted to come help, I would love it. That's a positive response in my mind. Met some potential resources. Someone who's been connected to firefighting policy, owns 2 chainsaws, a little bit older like myself, that could probably lend a hand. Anyway, there were resources that I think we can tap on it that were valuable to me. So yes, it wasn't a great return for release forms, but it was a great return in terms of getting people's responses and hearing the support for fire mitigation.
Okay. You want to, I guess, the last time we had the meeting, we approved the grant application that you were working on, and the BOT approved it, and it got submitted on April 5th to make the deadline. I think we might have changed the scope of the grant from when we met to instead of to buy a chipper, it's to repair the chipper and buy equipment and provide training to people, right?
Yes.
So that sort of fits into education as far as developing our base competency in town.
Okay, so yes. So a pretty good almost final iteration did go out to everyone on the fire mitigation team. So if you read the grant, you would understand that the scope had changed since first presented. It includes getting a cadre of volunteers trained, following a number of courses that were listed in the grant. The S-130 and the S-190 are, one deals with wildland firefighting and the other one deals with fire behavior. And these are courses that firemen take on their journey to become whatever the first level firemen. I talked to both Dan Batten and Laura Thomas about that, and Dan's comment is rather than sending people to the Colorado Fire School, then you should probably, he thought it would be better to do the online training because those individuals don't need the kind of hands-on that a firefighter would. So that was his perspective. Laura was supportive. Also on it was something called L180. Anyway, there's a number of courses that are listed, and I am getting general support from those two individuals that it's the right approach. If anything, a little bit too strong. Laura gave great feedback on the S213 course. This is the chainsaw course. It's a 4-day course that's taught by Colorado Fire School. She thinks that's a bit too heavy because not only do you learn all the safety stuff for running a chainsaw, but how to take it apart and rebuild it in the field. She's like, Sawyers for in a non-fire intense situation don't need that level of skill. And I told her that I'd also seen a course offered by VOC. This is Volunteers of Colorado that focus on trail building, and they have a 3-day chainsaw course. And she thought, without knowing the details, that would probably be more appropriate for our kind of chainsaw skills, because again, it's not that intense level. So since submitting the grant, learning more about the kinds of courses that were were in there, but better proposals to get a cadre of volunteers appropriately trained. Training is going to be a requirement from the city's perspective. So the mayor and Becky, they both want whatever training this cadre have is to be certificated training. And at one point in time, there was even training, certificatable training for running a chipper. And so that was available a year ago. I'm trying to find something that's available, coming future, but those are the types of things I'm looking for so that, again, the town will be comfortable with us developing the cadre.
Mhm. So what it all boils down to is, if you look down in our agenda, we see Bronc Day, Chipper Day volunteer, mitigation volunteer. This really boils down to, we've got to start developing a group of volunteers that are fire mitigation committed, right?
Agreed.
So if we get the grant and we really need to start on, our developing a group of people who really literally want to get their hands dirty, right?
Agreed. Paul and I had a good conversation Tuesday. Again, I think I learned as much from the offline conversations that day as I did from the content. And Paul had an excellent suggestion of, help, for these older people that want help stacking lumber, that would be the 10 days prior to, let's say starting June 1, if we could get volunteers organized to help stack wood, that would be a great opportunity for us. That won't take a lot of skills, technical skills, that is. And that would be if we could be prepared for that, that would be significant.
Can we use community service people for stuff like that? People that need to do community service?
No, great question. I don't know how that gets organized. I'm sure we could. It's a matter of how it gets organized so that the person they have to track community hours with knows that we're a legitimate way of getting those hours counted. I don't know what's involved in that, Kelly.
Okay.
But it's certainly a good question.
I mean, you want to be careful who you get, because I know it can be downright.
I've worked with community service people, when I was washing dishes at the soup kitchen. That I think they're already pre-screened. They don't let anyone that's, that's potentially dangerous be hanging out in the public, doing community service. They have a sense of the individual, and my experience with, they're almost always good workers. We've only seen a couple examples when they're just sloughing off, and that's rare.
Well, maybe they've improved since I've used them, but I know that there have been times that it occurred to me that that might be a fabulous resource.
The one thing that the soup kitchen had to its advantage is there is security on staff, and I'm sure the community service people know that, because I'm guessing that's how they get introduced into the system, to do the community service at the soup kitchen. That's something we wouldn't have.
So how do we go about developing a group of volunteers in our town?
Well, Paul's got his database. People have, expressed their willingness. I think I got 7 names from the post office of people that say they may be interested. So I think at some point here soon, a note needs to get authored to those people that have expressed interest, and we start doing what No Flow Code did in terms of showing slow organic growth, using social media to promote the actions of those volunteers and continue to build on it. What's your suggestion, David?
Well, I think that the key is, like you said, you've got a list of 7 names, and I suppose you have all of their contact information, and that they are interested in volunteering. I keep going back to a database. I mean, we have to collect this kind of information in one central database, so we can go to that database and say, okay, here's all the people who have said they will volunteer. Let's start communicating with them and tell them what volunteer opportunities we have. We have block captain volunteer opportunities. We have, go and cut trees down, volunteer kind of people on private land. We have, we need to define, I think, what volunteer jobs we have that need to be filled, and write a job description for those volunteer jobs, so that when we're communicating with people, we can say, here are a list of things, of volunteer activities that you could choose from as a volunteer that would benefit our town in the fire mitigation arena.
I mean, David, if I could kind of build on that, but then also loop back to something John said a while ago. The genius of the No Flow Co approach is pick up sticks. I mean, it's so simple, and there's no training, there's no certification, there's no insurance considerations. It's just, go to your neighbor's house, pick up sticks. That is steps 1 through N. And I think that's just genius in terms of its simplicity. And I would suggest that we build that approach into kind of a ramp up program for the Chipper Day in June. That we can, well, I know we're going to talk about this in a moment, but the Chipper Day fire mitigation tip to go out in ideally very soon, and from there push that on the database of the people we've asked for. Do another couple post office days, but around the idea of, this is really simple. You're going to, some of your neighbors need help picking up sticks. You're going to go to their house and pick up sticks. I really think that simplicity is just genius.
I agree. I mean, I think that the flow No Flow Co. is a great template for us to follow. And so you need people who say, I could sure use some help in my yard. If there's some volunteers that will come and pick up sticks on my property, I would love that. So you need people who need the help, and we need to marry it up with the people who are willing to provide the help. And so you need two lists of people, right? You need the people who want help and the people who will provide the help. And how do we generate those two sets of people?
One of
Well,
the things that occurs to me is that what if the town did a thing and we started doing it a couple of times a year where we did, you know how Woodland Park has a clean up Woodland Park day, but they pick up trash and do stuff like that. What if we did something like that here where people showed up in town just in the parks to pick up sticks and stuff, and then we could talk to them about how we're putting volunteers together to neighborhood with everybody helping each other, each taking turns in their neighbor's yard to help. What do you think? I mean, I could talk to Becky about it, see if they want to post
Well,
something at the,
PRT already, they do Week Creek or Creek Week or whatever, where there's a week of community cleaning up around creeks.
when is John?
Actually, sort of makes me think they may have a really good list of people that have helped with Creek Week in the past years. So that's a good that's a good suggestion, Kelly. We can leverage Creek Week.
When is that?
It's later in the summer. I think it was in the fall last year. I can't remember why I missed it, but I was traveling somewhere. But I think I think looking at a date in May, maybe where we can pick up sticks and again through Paul's QR code, we've already got people that are interested in helping or have interest. And I think we can generate something to do something in May, and then something, that first 10 days of June, getting ready for Chipper Day. That would be great starts.
I wonder if we could partner with the elementary school to do community service like that. Get the kids out of school on a nice day and just walk through the park. It's a day to be out in the sunshine and learn about community service.
That might be a side thing. High schoolers often need community service. National Honor Society requires community service.
That's right. Yeah.
I think I'd like to focus on citizens first. That's another level or layer of organization. If we get high school, elementary school kids, I'd like to see what we can do as Green Mountain Falls residents to help one another and develop that community aspect of No Flow Co. So maybe Paul and I can talk about what those names that have already people that have already expressed interest, and see what we've got, and then start getting something organized for mid-May.
That's great.
Because I know I'm out all next week, so that.
Okay, let's move to the monthly tip, Paul, because I think that ties into what we've been talking about, Chipper Day and that sort of thing. So do we need to share screen again?
Yes, I just want to bring up last year's version of the Chipper Day flyer.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And
then after that, can we go back? Because the recent developments was the stuff I had with Red Cross.
okay.
So I'll just touch very briefly. This was the fall 2022 Chipper Day, and you can see that it's fairly extensive in terms of its materials. And it's a Teller County wide program. It talks about stacking and proper stacking, the limitations on what you can and can't put out. For example, no cottonwoods. It follows the chipper. It explains that the materials are chipped back into your yard unless you designate and arrange for something else. So it's a fairly involved process. Like people can't just, or they shouldn't just, send an email or an address in and say, they need this information to know how to participate properly. I have approached Chief Murphy on getting this year's version of the flyer out. He hasn't responded yet. I just recently sent this to Town Hall to Becky and asked her if she'd be willing to look it over and modify it as necessary. So I think this should be our monthly tip, along with maybe an appeal to fill out the database, help pick up sticks, that ramp up to Chipper Day for people who just, for whatever reason, just can't stack slash in front of their house very easily.
I have a question, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, good. Okay. One of the issues that I constantly run into with the tip of the month that I'm afraid of is the PDF that you send. I'm afraid that when it gets finally on the Facebook page, if anybody's seen it, I'm always worried people can't read it because that the type is so small. And when I see this, would Becky or somebody be tailoring this so we don't have any mention of Teller County in this? Because somebody's going to see Teller County and they go, well, what does that have to do with me? I don't care about Teller County. But I mean, this is still good. I mean, is Becky going to just like lift information on this and put it on specifically for Green Mountain Falls with no mention of Teller?
I mean, obviously it's, her choice and the Chiefs. Last year, this was a two-pager. This is a generic description of why to tip and how in terms of stacking piles. And then page 2 is the particular dates for GMF and Chipeta Park. So I don't know that, I mean, I guess she could redesign it so it's a one-pager, but I think the way they've got it laid out is page 1 is generic. It applies to any
Yeah.
program until
Yeah, but why did that? Yeah, but they don't need like those information. They don't need phone numbers for fluorescent or whatever. They don't need the seal of Teller County. You see what I'm talking about?
Right.
And
No,
that would give you
right.
more room.
We could ask them to redesign it. Yeah, we could ask.
I think so. And so Paul, are you talking about this is going to be a 2-page tip of the month? Is that it?
Yes, this is what went out last year. And again, both pages are kind of integral. One talks about how to do it, like how to stack slash, what to leave out. And then the second page is the dates and the how you sign up. And I think both parts are essential. Now, could they redesign it and strip out the things that they don't need? Sure, we could certainly ask. But I think
Why do we have to ask? I mean, why shouldn't that be? Why do we have to ask them to do it? I mean, why can't we just do it ourselves?
I don't have the Word document to edit this.
Okay.
And editing this in PDF would be really hard. It would basically, I would just have to recreate it from scratch. And very importantly, I mean, certain things are easy to leave out, like fluorescent phone numbers. But I would like to get Chief Murphy's buy-in because ultimately it's going to be his people running the chipper. And if I leave something out and just say, well, I put in what I thought was important and sent it out, there's a chance I could leave something out that he would want to see in. So that's why I would prefer to do a collaborative approach.
Well, I'd be happy to work with Becky on that. You might pass that on to her. That I'd be happy to help out if there's anything that I could help her out with, like, sort of like I did with the press release.
Right, right. Okay, so that's what and again, this is still in progress, trying to get Chief Murphy and or Becky to give us this year's version of this announcement.
So you're still planning to get this out by the 1st of May or thereabouts?
Right.
For May, okay.
I'd like to move that we would accept the 2023 version of the chipper flyer as our tip of the month with Paul's additions to promote the request for volunteers.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Paul, you got to go ahead. Okay, Brock Day.
Can we,
Oh,
can I
I'm
tell
sorry.
them
Yes,
about
go
the,
ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was in contact with Corey Tanner from the Red Cross, and between Colorado and Wyoming, we are the community that gets to participate in the Red Cross's new pilot program for fire mitigation. We won. And what this will mean is by June, the Fire Mitigation Committee needs to identify and choose one neighborhood. She can only do 25 homes that are qualified, no more, to have, that we would need to have an assessment done as to what would need to be done for mitigation. And the Red Cross will then talk to those homeowners about fire safety in the home and provide any necessary equipment, smoke detectors and bed shakers and things like that. And also they will provide mitigation outside on those properties for those who are chosen. The 25 is max in a neighborhood. They're currently seeking resources to cut trees for free or dramatically reduced cost, and move wood piles and any other jobs necessary to mitigate the property. I had called Brandon Schofield, but he's selling his business. And he recommended Trent at Evergreen Tree Service in Woodland Park. And I've given that information to Corey because she is in the process of finding someone to help us with that. And then reaching out to the schools because I was sick. I didn't get to go to that leadership meeting that y'all went to down at Manitou Schools. I have contact information to get with Partnership for Healthy Choices because they also partner with the schools and Red Cross, and see if we can communicate with them what it is we're doing, because you only got like, what, 5 minutes with the leadership team, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it was
so
great.
to go into more detail about what we might be able to accomplish before school is out in the end of May. But that's exciting that we get to be part of that pilot program. And if it goes well, then it looks like the Red Cross will expand that to other communities, but she chose us.
Congratulations. That's fabulous, Kelly.
Isn't that?
Well
I
done.
am so excited about that.
Well done.
So when I was talking to her today, she hadn't been available for the last couple of weeks because she's been on jury duty. But when I was talking to her today, I asked her, what would she recommend? What did she think of when the Fire Mitigation Committee identifies those 25 homes? Would it be wise, like we had the youth corps here last year mitigating Thomas Trail on the town property. They won't do anything on the town property. They'll only do it for residents. But where did we mitigate on Thomas? Was it up near Iona? I know they did up behind my house. Was Iona the other place where they were doing that? Or
No,
is it
they
all
only-
along Thomas Trail?
All along Thomas, that's it.
Okay. So it made sense to me that if Thomas Trail, the homes that back up to Thomas Trail, they've already been mitigated on the trail, on the town property. Maybe those are the neighborhoods we should look at to choose those 25 homeowners that need help. What do you think? She thought that was a good idea, but I wanted to run that I wanted to run that by you guys.
So I guess it's a question to me, in my mind. How do you propose that we reach out to those people? Or
Well-
who's going to identify these 25 homes, and how are you going to do it?
Well, what would be needed first would be assessments on the properties. So if
Okay.
you pick a neighborhood, whether you picked, like I'm on Mountain Avenue, say you picked Mountain Avenue. If there are 25 houses on Mountain Avenue that it would make sense to do mitigation on, talk to each of the homeowners and ask if they'd be interested or if they have a need for this. If not here, then over whatever other homes that back up to Thomas Trail where the mitigation happened last year.
Okay, who is going to talk to the homeowners?
We haven't decided that yet. I could be part of that. I'd be happy to be part of that. But she's saying that the fire mitigation committee needs to identify and choose 25 homeowners who need help.
David, I'm gonna
Do you have a
suggest.
time horizon?
What?
What? I didn't hear you.
Kelly, I was wondering, can you remind me of the time horizon for this? Like when?
This has to be done before June. They're going to do this in June.
Okay.
So David, I'd suggest, we probably need a special meeting to hear from Red Cross. This also needs to go in front of BOT. I think there's we also need to understand, what obligations Green Mountain Falls has. Is the assessment a bill that we have to foot? Or, the service that we need to provide, whether it's paid or not paid. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and when I talked to her today, she
Into,
said, she can have-
additional details, once we identify a neighbor, once we get assessments performed, how we get, resident cooperation, participation, enrollment, all those key questions. But I agree, with where you're going is a strategy. The strategy being increase the fire break buffer, from what's already been done on, on Mount Esther, or around Thomas Trail down. And so, that's a great strategy. I mean, that's, I certainly have nothing opposed to that.
Would Adrian Knight be a good resource for that?
To do what?
For assessments?
No.
Okay.
I don't know that Adrian really does assessments at all. I think he's busy managing their mitigation contracts.
Okay.
So both CUSP and the Colorado State Forestry will do assessments for a fee. But I guess that's what we need to understand is where's the is Green Mountain Falls, those 25 homes, is that liability going to fall on the individual property owners that get this service of fire mitigation? It's a reasonable trade-off. Is it going to be a town obligation? If it's not, what level of assessment needs to be done? In other words, could we have volunteers like a Dan Batten or Byron Spinney, perform that on our behalf. I think there's a lot of questions. I would like to hear from the Red Cross about, more details, how we need to execute this, what they're expecting, roles and responsibilities, how this agreement is going to be negotiated between all the parties. Are there going to be written documents, written agreements, etc.?
Well, it sounds like the next step, and I had talked to her about this today, would be for us to have a conversation with her. I told her I would present this to y'all tonight and then see what you had to say about it, what you thought. And then we could invite her to a meeting at another time so that we could ask questions about this. I don't think we should wait a month for our next fire mitigation normal meeting to talk to her about this. I think it's something that should happen sooner. But she's in the process now of gathering resources to do this. But she's only got so much money.
Well, she's got more than we do because we don't have any.
But anyway, I was excited that we got chosen. She fought for us.
Well, that is good. I mean, I really appreciate that. My big question is the execution side of this. It's both timing and execution, frankly. Heck, we've been working on trying to get releases from our homeowners for a project now for 2 months, and we're just barely scratching the surface on that. I mean, to get 25 homeowners identified and assessments done, and we don't even know who's going to do the assessments. I mean, to me, it's a big question mark in terms of how do you execute this?
Well, one of the things is, the tree service companies would be more inclined to do the assessments if they thought they were going to get the work.
Who's going to pay them?
I don't know. Now, what she's saying is that she is trying to get them to do it for free or for a dramatically reduced cost.
I guess I have a whole lot of questions. I'm just not sure who to ask them to. So I guess we need to set up a meeting with her so we can understand and ask questions.
Yeah. Do you want me to arrange for that?
Sure.
When is
Yeah.
a reasonable time for us to have that conversation with her? What works for all of you?
Well, I don't think that, first of all, if all of us attend, it's going to have to be a formally noticed meeting. So
In this case, David, that would probably be a good thing.
yeah. I'm just saying it will have to be made public that we're having the meeting.
Would it make sense? Do you think it should take a half an hour to ask questions? And
Oh, I see this as being much more than a half hour. I mean, we've already spent a half hour on this.
okay, so do you want me to arrange for an hour for her? Is next week too soon for all of you?
No, I'm available. I would say whatever fits her schedule. If we can get maybe some days and times that could be floated out, and everybody can respond to what works for them, and pick a day that works for most people.
Well, is a Monday good? A week from now? Or a Tuesday? No, we didn't.
I have flexibility in my schedule.
I do too.
I want to throw out, does this need to be a joint meeting? It sounds like the time frame is going to be very compressed. And whether or not a joint meeting with town manager and BOT makes sense, or if you feel like we need to get better grounded first before a joint meeting.
I think for the this is just my opinion. I think for the fire mitigation committee to ask the necessary questions and then bring it to the town and the board of trustees after we've had that opportunity would make the most sense. Don't you? Or would there be a reason to bring them into it when she's available?
I think you're going to have the meeting with all parties as quickly as possible.
So invite Becky and Todd and those guys. Okay.
Well, yeah, even, yeah, Becky for sure. And then I don't know, who else, but Becky's the one who's going to have to agree on, whatever it comes out of this, and she'll have to be the one that takes it to the board of trustees for approval. I mean, Todd may want to sit in on it. And probably will.
Okay, I'll see what I can arrange with Corey for next week. Evening, I'm guessing works better for all of you.
I can do it in the daytime.
Okay, I can too.
Well, if you're going to get Becky, you're going to probably have to do it during the day.
Yeah, I will be traveling on the West Coast for next week and the following week. So I could be available in the evenings, but I can't be available during the days. Now, if that's not a showstopper, like if we still have a quorum or it's not necessary, please don't hang this up on my account. But yeah, I will be on the road for the next couple weeks.
All right, I will check and see what availability Corey and Becky have during the day next week. And then I'll get back, I'll give you a couple different dates that'll work.
Yeah, that'll be good. Just get back to us with some time that works for Becky and Corey and I guess you and John and me. Sounds like Paul's going to be pretty busy, and
Okay.
especially in the daytime.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Okay, Bronc Day booth location. John, that was kind of your topic.
I added this to the list. My wife, as you may know, is co-chairing Bronc Day this year. Kelly had reached out to her to make sure that fire mitigation could have a booth without charge, and that was approved. I had also reached out to the Trails group that's hosting the breakfast, and they had approved us to be in front of the Church of the Wildwood at breakfast, or while people are lining up to go into breakfast. So we've got two potential venues. I felt like it was, better to address this sooner than later. Where we believe would be, our preferred time and location to put our resources. And I have personally, I do have a commitment to be flipping pancakes during the breakfast. So if it is in front of the Church of the Wildwood, then that would be one less body, that you would have at your booth. So that does, that's one factor to consider. But what I'd like to do is see if we could come to agreement on what the best location would be for our booth.
What is the time frame of the pancake breakfast?
So the breakfast, 7 to 10, parade is at 10. And then I think the booths are being, anticipated to be set up and people arriving around 11.
Where we had the booth last year worked. I thought that was a good spot.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, could we relocate it? So could we be at Church of the Wildwood for the pancake thing? In other words, maybe we don't have to have the booth. Maybe we could be inside at a table, right?
That would work.
For the
At Church of
pancake
the Wildwood?
breakfast, and then have our booth kind of where it was last year.
I think what they're anticipating for their setup with the pancake breakfast is inside would be the donations table, and that outside would be fire mitigation if we were gonna be selling our wares there.
Outside,
Well, under more like the portico, underneath that, the structure that's approaching the door.
right.
So
So-
could we have a place in both spots, in the park and there?
I think it's whatever we decide. Whatever makes sense, whatever resources we've got, to keep it going. Party as much as we can.
Did we borrow Nate's little tent, pop-up tent thing last year? Whose was that?
Was Nate's.
So where are we gonna get our little pop-up tent?
Question. I don't have one.
I don't either.
I don't either.
I have a pup tent, but I don't think people will crawl in and out of it.
Okay, so if we had it at Church of the Wildwood, we would be outside. And kind of have a table. You get plenty of people coming and going there. I mean, so there's a good reason to do it in conjunction with the pancake breakfast.
Ooh, what if we did it under that portico at Church in the Wildwood in the morning while people are having breakfast? That's a good time to be there. Later in the day, not so much, but what if we got a table underneath the farm stand? If we don't have a pop-up, we could still be protected under the farm stand. Would they let us do that?
Well, my wife is here and she's overhearing our conversation. She's shaking her head no. That's going to be a space at a premium. There's a
At this point.
at least at this point in time. And the other thing is, she's encouraging us to consider actually being in the parade as well. So fire mitigation could have we could walk along and hold up a sign or
Yeah,
drive our motorcycles, our unicycles.
right. We're talking about having all the different groups maybe walk to attract attention as well. So just an idea, but it sounds like it might be a lot for you guys. So. Do you have a tent? Like a tent? Okay.
Well, one of our committee members is going to be flipping pancakes.
Yes, until 10 o'clock. Yes.
But I tell you what,
And then you could go walk in the parade, John.
Yes, I'll need a walk. Well, maybe this was too ambitious of me to seek a thinking that we would have a decision tonight. There isn't anything time critical on this. We can
It's
scratch it.
important, but not urgent.
It is not urgent. We can talk about it next month.
I'm using Paul's, what I learned from Paul tonight. It's
I see
important.
what you did there, Dave. Well,
There's-
footnote to Stephen Covey. So
There's no consequence if we don't decide tonight.
Okay, can we discuss it
table it.
in May? Or, yeah.
We will.
May?
We will
Okay.
indeed.
Okie dokie. Then it's tabled until May. Chipper Day Volunteer Organization. Was that you as well, John?
Oh, I don't know, but you saw the note that I sent to to Becky, and I think we're all on the same page that Chief Murphy wants the right number and the right skill set. So that's something that we still need to hear back from him and Becky on, so that we can get to the right number.
I wonder if we could include that in our monthly flyer that Paul's going to do, that we need volunteers to assist in
Yes.
the and tell them where to sign up.
That's a great idea.
Wasn't Chief concerned about a surplus of volunteers?
Yeah.
Yes.
He only wants a certain number. I think 2. Is that right, John?
Well, I want that. No, I haven't heard that number, but he did tell me that there were too many last year at some points where, the extra hands didn't help, they only hindered. So.
Well, I've heard somewhere that 2 is the optimal number for him in terms of volunteers. And what he's proposing is having shifts of 4 hours. So a morning shift of 2, an afternoon shift of 2 on 2 days. So you'd need a total of 8 volunteers to do 2 people on 4-hour shifts for 2 days.
Yeah, raising that number of volunteers, it might be better to do a more targeted approach, like approach people individually. I was in on the fall chipper days, and yeah, we were, there's 6 or 7 volunteers lined up holding trees, waiting to feed them into the chipper. At some point you start tripping over each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, nevertheless, it still would be nice to get it out there that we're looking for volunteers. If we have 100 volunteers sign up, we can just pick the best, right?
Have a chipper day tryout. Drag
Yeah.
the road.
Do you have any experience? Yeah, I would say, put it in the flyer and say, we're looking for volunteers that'll help.
That's true.
Contact.
We can always divert people to say, okay, we don't need you to run the chipper. We need you to pick up sticks the week before. So
Exactly. Yeah.
reorient them elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. We need volunteers to prepare for Chipper Day and to help on Chipper Day.
Yeah, and that way, we're not turning people away. We're just redirecting them where they're needed.
Yeah. Okay, mitigation volunteer. I mean, we need a lot of volunteers.
I feel like we've already hit this.
Yeah. Okay. And we need a job description for block captains, Paul, when you can get that.
Yeah. Yes, David, I got to get on that. That one slipped away from me.
And how are we doing on our database? Have we gotten, is there anything new on that? Have we added anything?
No new updates. John had a good suggestion that when we do our introductory letter, who we are, that we include not just a link, but a QR code there. But no, we have not had any new registrants. And I know, John, you were handing out the business card and working people at the post office, but we have not.
No one took you up on the QR code. No new hits.
No new hits. No.
Man, I'm upset.
Can we add the 7 people that John got?
Oh yeah, we can absolutely manually add folks in. So John, if you want to send those to
Yes,
me,
I will.
I can manually enter them. We've got their information, and they can start receiving monthly tips and updates on chipper days and things like that.
Yeah, we just need to get the word out, that we could use lots of volunteers. But yeah, we can add those 7 people that John got, and I think we need to add all of the people who have sent back their release form, because that's going to have information on there that we could add to our contacts, right?
Yes, but John and I actually had this conversation. If because people didn't really consent to, when they sent in that flyer, they didn't really consent to have their information shared in our database, and I'm a little concerned that you know, contacting them unsolicited might not uh, might be perceived as, you know, directing the information in a way that they didn't ask to have done.
Okay. John, in those 7 people that you met and you got on your list, did you happen to talk to any of them about their interest in being part of our committee?
I did not. That was not part of the spiel. I tell you, I'm overdue. I'm delinquent. Tomorrow's a week. I do need to get back to, all these individuals and just thank them for, showing. Share with them the QR code if you want to, get involved. Here's how. And then ask specifically about interests. So I do owe them all an email.
And we really need to get our 5th spot filled on the committee, because I think we're just so short. We could use an extra hand in all the stuff that we got going.
Have you requested that it be posted yet?
Carolyn, you wrote me an email and said you were going to post that we needed somebody, and particularly with grant writing experience, right?
Oh, yeah, that happened. That
It
happened.
did happen.
Yeah. And I made the pitch on it, that, and I'm doing this with other things too, that summer people are welcome to apply. Anybody, even though you don't live in Green Mountain Falls, if you own a home here or pay tax or whatever, you can work on it. I'm not so certain that people realize, people who don't live here, people who are only in town for even 3 or 4 weeks a year or something like that, if they own property, they can still serve on these committees, and if they want to, and there might be some people out there. So yes, it ran a couple of weeks ago.
And you didn't hear anything from anybody?
No, because I think I forget what it was, but I had the contact information, probably you or somebody. I'd have
Okay,
to
well,
check.
I didn't hear from anybody. Okay. Okay, well, has anybody got any ideas on potential committee candidates?
You're the only friends I have, so no.
Gosh, I'm sorry, John. Okay, well, I guess you need to expand your friend base.
Oh, thanks. That hurts, David.
Well, you did say we were the only friends you had, didn't you say that?
I did.
All right, well, y'all get your thinking cap on about that so we can hopefully fill this 5th position. All right, well, volunteers. That's what we need. We need to get that program off the ground and get people, ready to go. We need to write some job descriptions and identify all these different places we want volunteers to work. And Kelly, you're going to set up a meeting with the Red Cross for us in the next few days. This week, next week, something soon. So.
I'm
anything
also
else?
going to check on those Sawyer and Garston maps. They won't let them go because they're antique maps. They're over 100 years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Understandable. So I guess we'll have some sidebars. In the next few days, I'll call and talk to some of you about next steps as far as the release agreement, and how we move forward with that after I've talked to Adrian and gotten some priorities from him. So I think y'all have done a lot of great work in the last 3 weeks since we last met. Thanks for all that. We will be on schedule for our next meeting, I guess, in May, the last Monday in May will be the 29th. That's what I see. That work for everybody?
Indeed.
I'm
Yep.
sure we're going to be talking a lot between now and then. Sorry for the long meeting tonight, but I appreciate everybody hanging in there.
Are we going back to the 6:30 Mountain Time starting time?
We are, yes, we are. Unless this works for everybody, I like 6 o'clock better than 6:30. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, it's not an issue for me.
Okay, well, let's have it at 6. I'm sure Carolyn likes that too.
May I put, shall I note in the minutes that this is the new start time, 6 o'clock?
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
very good. All right, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Meeting adjourned at, let's see, what time is it?
41.
8:41. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Hey.